How do you know when it is time to make a change? A small change, a big change. That's what we're going to dive into today. So, it could be a change in your personal life, in your health, in your career. But how do you know when it is beyond just this frustration or this like moment of feeling overwhelmed, and when it's actually a time to take a step back and reassess? So, I actually thought about this when I was walking on the treadmill. So I ended up getting, we've had a treadmill, but I ended up getting a desk to put over the top of the treadmill, and so that I can walk and work. So it's like my laptop, my treadmill desk. And I was thinking about how I had made that change, that when I'm writing out copy or notes, or when I'm writing out notes for these episodes or anything like that, that I'm just sort of working on my computer, I'm not on calls necessarily, that I would start doing that from my treadmill. So something that I normally would do sitting, I now started to do while I was walking. And that actually started me. And the other reason that I really like to do it is because I'm actually a lot more creative. When I'm sitting all day, I also don't have that creativity. It's a big reason why I tell people to get up and move throughout the day, right? And so when I'm walking, all of these ideas usually come to me when I'm on my walking desk. And so that really got me thinking about, just sort of this catalyst or this thing that made me make the change in how I work. And it was all really these small little things and these moments that added up. So things like not getting enough steps in the day, that was just happening over and over, and I was just getting frustrated that I just didn't have a chance to get enough steps in during the day. Or my back starting to hurt from sitting too much, not liking my office chair, wanting to get more movement in, wanting to feel more creative during the day, like all of these little things that were adding up. And I had been complaining about for a long time, like, and you just kind of felt it. And then I saw actually someone else post about getting this desk for over the top of their treadmill. Some people actually get like a walking pad they put in their office, but I already had a treadmill in the basement. So I'm like, I'm just going to get something that sits over the top of it. And I saw someone else post about it, and I thought, wow, that's a great idea. And then I got it. So it was this like ache, this like pain that I had for a while. And then I saw somebody else with this solution, and I started to do it. And so this actually really got me thinking about all of these times and these moments that I realized, okay, it's time to make a change. And I really want you, as I'm talking through today with this episode, really think about what you have going on for you, and what are those things that you're like, oh, I know it's time to make a change. So I just think of all of these examples, like back in college when I decided to switch majors. So I was going for early childhood education. And when I started to have this feeling like I no longer was aligned to doing early childhood education, but I didn't know what else to do. So I researched and I talked to people, and I discovered the communication department and found interpersonal communication degree. And I was like, oh, that's like the perfect fit. And so I was feeling frustrated and like at disease. I did my research, and then I found something that felt like the right fit. And like that was the catalyst to let me know it was time to make that change. When I left my first few jobs, again, it was like I had this feeling that I no longer was aligned to doing the work that I was doing. I no longer wanted to do the thing that I was doing. It was usually, maybe sometimes I usually let it ruminate a little bit too long. It's not like I instantly would get that feeling and then go and make a change, right? Usually it has to build up. It has to be from like this little annoyance to a big pain is usually that threshold that we get to. And so those first couple jobs where it was like I would kind of let it ruminate for a while, and then all of a sudden I would like, all right, this isn't working anymore. I would do my research and I would find another solution, something that excited me, right? When I left the corporate world, and I started to notice like what was the thing again that really was the catalyst for me to know, okay, it's time to make a change, is that feeling. I noticed that I was complaining or I was stressed out more than I was even enjoying it anymore. And it felt like no matter what I did, I couldn't find my way out of that feeling. And I want you to think about that. Like you no longer feel like you can find your way out of that feeling. And it no longer was lighting me up. It was no longer something that I was excited about. It's causing me more stress and more overwhelm. And so that was my sign. Okay, this isn't this is no longer something I can continue to do. It was impacting family and health and all of that. Okay, it's time to make a change. So I looked, researched, found a solution, right? You're starting to see this pattern. Even leaving my last company, the last time I actually worked for other people to start my own business, I just had this feeling that I was meant to do more and that I didn't align with the way that things were going, and that there had to be a way to do things better that would better honor my values and the things that I really wanted to do. Right. And so when I think of the pattern of all of these things, right, things with the walking treadmill to leaving, a certain major in college to leaving careers, like all of those things, I think of this pattern of you start to get this feeling that builds up from like a little ache to a really big pain to, okay, this is my cue that something needs to change. I'm start looking and researching solutions and getting other people's perspectives and figuring out like what other options do I have, and then find the thing that lights me up and do that thing. Like this was just this pattern I started to notice. And again, thinking of just my overall health, I've talked about my journey, just getting to that point where I was just so fed up of feeling sick all the time, and finally making the commitment that I would not stop until I got answers, and that I actually got into thriving, which is still a journey that I'm on. But I think for me, I really felt like it was just time to make the change. Like all of those things I think of, how do you know when it's time to make a change? It's when I got fed up of my own bullshit. Like just to say it super transparently, right? Like I got fed up with my own bullshit. When you're just stuck in this feeling that you are at the effect of everything. Like when you just feel like, everything is against you, or you feel like you're at the effect of everything, and you just feel like no matter what you do, right? That is not a place that I like to be personally. And so it's finally when you have that moment and you say like, enough is enough, and it's time to make a change, because no one is going to do it for me, right? Nobody is going to do it for you. So I really want you to think about this and where you're at right now. And I'm sure that you are, thinking of situations, maybe it's your health. Maybe you haven't been prioritizing you've been staying up too late. You keep missing those workouts you say you want to do. You aren't drinking the water. You aren't eating the things that make you feel good. Maybe you're in this constant state of stress and burnout. When is enough enough, right? What is the thing that is going to cause you to change? And you can wait until your body forces you to, either getting sick or does something to force you to slow down, which is oftentimes what a lot of people get to, right? Or you can take control and decide that you are the one that decides it's time to make a change now, because you're sick of that feeling, right? Maybe it's a change with your career. You're unhappy where you're at, and you've been unhappy for a long time, but you keep staying stuck. Maybe it's in your business. You aren't getting the result that you want because you keep avoiding things, or you keep not taking action on things. You keep watching everyone else doing this thing that you want to do, but it's just a change that you're not ready to make yet because you're scared, because you're afraid, whatever it might be. Only you can decide though when it's time to really make the change. So some cues that you might be ready and that it might be time, and that, okay, enough's enough, right? I already talked about some of those, but you just have this feeling of unease. Like, how do you know it's time to make the change? You just have this constant feeling of unease. You know that feeling? Like you never feel settled. You always feel anxious. You always feel a little bit just overwhelmed. You're just carrying this around, right? That's a really big sign that something needs to change. You're burnt out. You're stressed out. You're overwhelmed all the time. We all get stressed out and burnt out and overwhelmed at moments. It's this perpetual all the time thing that's happening, right? So my word this year was simplify. And I'll be honest, hold me accountable to this, but I'm still really working on this. But I started to get sick, last year of my own chaos of just running around all the time and having so many things going on and just having all of these different things in my business, my personal life. And so I decided, okay, enough's enough. It's time to simplify. And I'm still working on that, but I still have a lot of the year left. So really keeping that in mind. It's just this feeling that you have that's like, okay, it's time to make that change. Another cue would be the thing that you once loved, you no longer like, or you can even barely tolerate. Like that's a really big cue to you that it's time to make a change. Maybe not in the thing itself, but maybe in the way that you're approaching it, in the way that you're coming at it, right? So this change doesn't have to be a huge change. These could be small change. It could be a smaller thing. It's like, I just need to change the way I'm showing up. I need to change the way that I'm doing this thing. Or it could be I need to change the thing itself. Another cue is that you just find yourself complaining all the time. Like, you get exhausted listening to yourself. And I know I was there at times when it was like I stayed in something too long. It was because I got sick of myself talking about it, right? You keep having this feeling or this little voice or this gut feeling that you want to make a change, but you're scared, right? And so what I did in those moments is, and again, sometimes it took me longer than maybe it should have, but I also believe that it was the right time whenever I chose that it was the right time, right? So not going back and regretting it, but realizing, okay, there was a reason that I kind of waited to make that step. And so when I finally started to tune into that feeling, I would journal or I would walk or I would reflect and really just sit with myself and sort of figure out, like, where are these feelings coming from? And is this just a moment in time? Is this sort of an outlier because of this certain thing that's happening right now in this moment? Or is it something that I was feeling all the time and that no matter what, it didn't go away, right? Because that's a big thing that you want to kind of tune in. And that was my cue to leaving one of my roles was, I would try and take on this new perspective and I would try all these different strategies and I would try to change my approach and try and think more positively and trying to connect with people and share my frustrations and try and work it out. But it felt like no matter what I did, I never felt at ease. And so that was my sign. Okay, it's time, right? It's time. And I say that to myself a lot, like, okay, it's time now, right? And so then I really started to map out a plan of what could that change look like? What do I want it to look like? And what would all of that really mean? What factors did I all need to consider in making this change? And then at some point, you just rip the Band-Aid off because you're never going to fully feel ready for whatever this change is that you're planning to make. Let me say that for you again. You will never fully feel ready for whatever this change is that you're planning to make. Do as much as you can to get yourself to know that it is time, and it's going to feel messy and sloppy and whatever it might feel, but that you have sat with yourself enough to know that it's time to make this change, no matter how uncomfortable it is for you. And if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking of exactly the thing that you are feeling called to change. Like, if I could see you, I would imagine your head is nodding and you're thinking about that thing that it's time to change. And it could be something small, right? It could just be a small habit that you have, or the way that you do something in your business or in your daily routine that you've just been really wanting to change. Or it might be something really big, like changing your career, like changing your business, starting your business, changing the way that you do your business, changing processes, changing a big thing in your health. Either way, whether it's small or big, you can make the choice to start making that change, right? You've already been feeling the pull. You've already had the calling to make the change. This is the episode that's just telling you right now that maybe it's time. I'm not going to tell you for sure it's time because that's up to you, right? But maybe it's time. So dig into those feelings and figure out what changes you want to make and what steps you would need to start taking, and then do the thing. I hope this episode motivated you. I hope this episode got you really thinking about what is that change that you have been sitting and ruminating on and thinking, or this exciting thing you've been wanting to do and you've just been thinking about it. And I hope that this episode, for one person and all of you listening and whoever really needed to hear it, is the catalyst to remind you that maybe it's time. See you next time.